The fragile peace of the Middle East was shattered just 3 days ago, marking the beginning of a direct and violent military confrontation between Iran and Israel. The conflict ignited when Iran launched a massive and coordinated assault, bypassing its usual proxy forces to strike Israel directly from its own soil. This bold move represented a significant escalation, transforming years of shadow warfare into an open and declared conflict. The skies over the region, once pathways for commerce and travel, became a battleground filled with the menacing hum of drones and the fiery trails of ballistic missiles, setting a dangerous new precedent for the long-standing animosity between the two nations. Iran's military unleashed an astonishing wave of firepower in its initial attack. Reports indicate that over a single night, a staggering 70 surface-to-surface missiles and dozens of advanced drones were fired toward major Israeli population centers. This was not a symbolic gesture. It was a calculated military operation designed to overwhelm Israel's renowned air defense systems. The targets were strategic and widespread, aiming for maximum impact on both civilian morale and national infrastructure. Cities like Tel Aviv and Haifa, bustling hubs of Israeli life and commerce, found themselves directly in the crosshairs of this unprecedented offensive, forcing millions of citizens to seek immediate safety. The damage inflicted upon Israel was both immediate and severe, bringing the reality of the conflict into residential neighborhoods and critical industrial zones. In the coastal city of Bat Yam, a single missile strike tragically killed 6 people and completely destroyed an entire city block, leaving a scene of devastation and rubble. Further north, an Arab-Israeli family of 4 lost their lives when a missile struck their home in the town of Tamra. The port city of Haifa also suffered significant damage, with crucial oil pipelines and electrical transmission lines being hit, disrupting essential services and highlighting the vulnerability of the nation's infrastructure to such a large-scale attack. In the face of this barrage, Israeli society was forced into a state of high alert. Air raid sirens became a constant, unnerving soundtrack across most of the country, from the northern borders to the southern deserts. The widespread and disciplined use of bomb shelters is being credited with saving countless lives, as families rushed to reinforced rooms and public shelters with each warning. However, the psychological toll of such a sustained threat cannot be understated. The sense of security was pierced, and daily life was suspended as the nation braced for impact, unsure of when or where the next missile would land. The skies were no longer safe. Israel did not wait long to respond. The Israeli Defense Forces initiated a massive and expanded campaign of airstrikes against a wide array of targets deep inside Iranian territory. This operation was not just a retaliatory measure. It was a strategic effort to cripple Iran's military and nuclear capabilities for the foreseeable future. Israeli warplanes have reportedly struck over 250 distinct targets since their operation began, focusing on oil depots, known missile launch sites, and critical nuclear infrastructure. The message from Israeli leadership was clear and uncompromising. The attack would be met with a response of overwhelming force, intended to re-establish deterrence and inflict a heavy price. The strikes penetrated far into Iran, showcasing Israel's long-range strike capabilities. One of the most significant attacks targeted a major oil refinery near Sharan, a district of the capital Tehran, causing colossal fires that could be seen for miles and sending plumes of black smoke into the sky. In a remarkable display of operational reach, another strike hit an Iranian aircraft while it was refueling in the city of Mashhad, located nearly 2,300 kilometers from Israel. These actions demonstrated that no part of Iran was beyond the reach of the Israeli military, a strategic signal aimed directly at Iran's leadership and its powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Israeli response specifically targeted the leadership and assets of the IRGC, the elite branch of the Iranian military responsible for its missile and drone programs. Several high-ranking officials were reportedly killed in the airstrikes, a devastating blow to Iran's command and control structure. Among the confirmed casualties were General Mohammad Kazemi, the IRGC's intelligence chief, and his deputy, General Hassan Mohaqiq. Even the IRGC's overall commander, General Hossein Salami, and the head of its air force, Amir Ali Hajizadeh, were reported to have been killed. The Iranian Foreign Ministry building in Tehran also sustained damage. a symbolic strike against the diplomatic face of the regime. Furthermore, Israel's operation has taken direct aim at Iran's controversial nuclear program, a core source of tension for decades. Israeli officials have made public statements indicating their intent to devastate Iran's nuclear capability, asserting that the job's not done. Significant damage has been reported at key facilities in Natanz and Isfahan, both central to Iran's uranium enrichment activities. While the heavily fortified underground Fordo site has not yet been targeted, according to international observers, the strikes on other nuclear sites represent a serious escalation. This part of the campaign carries immense risk, potentially pushing the conflict into an even more dangerous and unpredictable phase. The human toll of this rapidly escalating conflict is mounting on both sides, with civilians bearing the heaviest burden. In Israel, the Iranian attacks have killed at least 13 people and left over 370 injured, with dozens still reported missing in the chaos. The scenes of destruction in cities like Bat Yam are a stark reminder of the deadly power unleashed. In Iran, the Israeli retaliation has been even more lethal, with reports indicating that at least 150 people have been killed and hundreds more have been injured. These figures represent families torn apart, lives cut short, and communities gripped by grief and fear as the cycle of violence continues to spiral. The international community, led by the United States, has watched the unfolding events with growing alarm. The Trump administration has publicly stated that the United States had nothing to do with the Israeli strikes and has issued calls for peace and a return to negotiations. Crucial nuclear talks that were scheduled to take place in Oman between the United States and Iran have been cancelled, though American officials insist the door for diplomacy remains open. However, this diplomatic path is fraught with peril. Iran has issued a stern warning, threatening to strike United States military installations in the region if Washington provides continued assistance to Israel, placing American forces on high alert. Life for ordinary citizens in both nations has been turned upside down. In Iran's capital, Tehran, a palpable sense of panic has set in. Heavy traffic has clogged the city's arteries as many residents attempt to flee to safer areas. Long lines have formed at gas stations, which have begun rationing fuel to manage dwindling supplies. In a sign of the severity of the situation, the city's metro stations, mosques, and even schools are being converted into makeshift bomb shelters to protect the population from the ongoing Israeli airstrikes. This disruption to daily life highlights the widespread fear that has taken hold of the Iranian people. Meanwhile, in Israel, the constant threat of attack has forced a nationwide adaptation to a wartime reality. While the Iron Dome and other air defense systems have been effective, no system is perfect, and the psychological strain is immense. Israeli airline El Al has suspended all of its flights, grounding the national carrier and isolating the country from international travel. Similarly, Iran has closed its airspace to all civilian aircraft, further deepening the region's isolation. These measures, while necessary for safety, have severed transportation links and created a sense of entrapment for citizens on both sides, who are now living under the shadow of a war with no clear end in sight. The mood among the people of Iran and Israel is a tense mixture of fear, defiance, and profound uncertainty. For Israelis, the initial shock of the direct Iranian attack has given way to a grim resolve, a feeling that their country must respond forcefully to protect itself. Yet beneath this resolve lies a deep-seated anxiety about what comes next. The constant wail of sirens and nights spent in shelters have frayed nerves, and many fear a prolonged, all-out war that could draw in other regional actors. The sense of personal security has been shattered, replaced by the question of whether this conflict represents a new, more dangerous, and permanent reality. On the other side, the Iranian people are caught between the actions of their government and the devastating consequences of Israel's retaliation. While some may support the regime's aggressive posture, many others are simply terrified. The sight of Israeli jets striking targets in their capital has brought the reality of war home in a way that proxy conflicts never did. The rush to flee major cities, the rationing of essential goods, and the use of public spaces as shelters paint a picture of a population desperate for safety. There is a growing fear that the regime's actions have invited a catastrophe upon the nation, with ordinary people paying the ultimate price. The leadership in both countries has doubled down on their hardline stances, raising fears that de-escalation is not an immediate priority. Iranian President Ebrahim Pezeshkian has threatened a more decisive and severe response if Israeli attacks continue, suggesting that Tehran is preparing for further rounds of conflict. Simultaneously, Iran's security forces claim to have arrested 2 alleged Mossad operatives, fueling the narrative of an ongoing covert war. This rhetoric, combined with Israel's stated goal of crippling Iran's nuclear program, leaves very little room for compromise and suggests both sides are digging in for a protracted struggle. Looking ahead, the path forward is shrouded in danger. The most immediate risk is that the tit-for-tat strikes could spiral into a full-scale regional war, potentially drawing in the United States and other powers. The targeting of Iran's nuclear facilities is a particularly volatile element. If Israel decides to strike the heavily fortified Fordow site, it could trigger an even more ferocious Iranian response and a desperate push by Tehran to build a nuclear weapon. For now, the region holds its breath, caught in a precarious balance between a fragile truce and the abyss of a wider conflict. The decisions made in the coming days will determine the fate of millions.